I stared at the sheet of paper my daughter had placed in my hands, struggling to believe what I was reading. It wasn't a suggestion, nor a request for a little help. It was a full-blown work schedule. My work schedule. In my own house. Starting tomorrow, Mom, these are your daily duties. If this story touched your heart, friends, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more touching stories. Thank you for being here. Renata said as if she were addressing an employee she barely tolerated. Her voice had changed over the past few months. Colder, sharper, practiced. And then she added the sentence that sliced through me like ice. If you don't agree, you can pack your things. Gustavo and I already talked to a lawyer. We've lived here 2 years. We have rights. My knees went weak. Rights? In my house? The house I'd spent 40 years paying off? The place where I'd brought her home from the hospital as a newborn? The schedule was ruthless. 6 a.m., wake up, prepare breakfast. 7 a.m., get the kids ready. 8 a.m., clean the house. 9 a.m., laundry. 10 a.m., start lunch. It went on and on until 11 at night, when apparently I was supposed to iron clothes for the next day. No breaks, no consideration, not even the illusion of kindness. From the couch, Gustavo barely glanced up from his phone. And obviously, he added lazily, you'll be covering household expenses. I mean, that's what your pension is for, right? I swallowed hard, my hands trembling around the paper. Memories flooded me. Birthdays in this living room. Nights of comforting Renata after heartbreak. Moments when she looked at me like she was my entire world. Now she looked at me like I was staff. You don't have much time to decide, she continued, waving her freshly painted nails. And let's be honest, Mom, where else can you live with only a $600 pension? At least here you'll have a roof, food, and your grandkids. Unless you prefer to end up in some lonely room by yourself. Gustavo chuckled under his breath, enjoying the show. My grandchildren sat on the carpet with their tablets, unaware of the storm around them. Ethan glanced up innocently. Grandma, can you make me a snack? I'm hungry. To him, it was normal. Grandma cooks, Grandma cleans, Grandma serves. I felt something inside me crumble. Mom, Renata said sweetly as she walked over, placing a hand on my shoulder in a gesture that felt rehearsed. This is good for you. You've been so unmotivated lately. Having responsibilities might help you feel useful. Useful. As if the last 40 decades of my life had been meaningless. As if raising her, providing for her, surviving heartbreak, and keeping this home running wasn't real work. Gustavo finally looked up. Come on, we work, we study, you don't do anything. This way, everyone carries their weight. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Me doing nothing? I had carried this family on my back for years. My sacrifices had built the roof they now claimed ownership over. I looked around the house, the scratches on my once beautiful wooden table, the ruined sofa, the missing family photos replaced with posters, my books shoved in boxes. They had taken over every corner of my home piece by piece, until nothing felt like mine anymore. And now they wanted my time, my money, my labor, and my silence. The weight of that realization sat on my chest like a stone. But I didn't know then, this was only the beginning. Because the next request they made pushed me past the point of breaking and changed everything. I forced myself towards the kitchen, clutching the awful schedule so tightly that the paper wrinkled beneath my fingers. My legs felt stiff, almost numb, as if they belonged to a completely different person. Inside the pantry, the truth hit me even harder than the paper in my hand. There was barely any food left. 3 broken cookies at the bottom of a bag, a single dented can of tuna, half a bag of rice. That was it. In the fridge, it was even worse. Gustavo's beer, 2 expensive yogurts Renata bought only for herself, and a sad plastic container with old leftovers that nobody wanted. "Grandma, there are no cookies," Valerie called out, irritation already in her tiny voice, another habit she had inherited from her mother. I inhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. "Coming, sweetheart," I answered. But before I could step out, I heard the familiar click of Renata's heels approaching. That sound used to mean she was excited to show me something. New shoes, a school project, a promotion. Now it meant trouble. She appeared in the doorway, waving another piece of paper. "By the way, Mom," she said casually, sticking the list on the refrigerator door, "we need a full grocery run tomorrow morning. I wrote everything we need. Should be around $150. I blinked. "Renata, $150 in 1 week? I can't afford that. My pension won't stretch." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Mom, don't start. Gustavo is saving for our own place. We can't be wasting his income on groceries. And you eat here too. It's normal for you to contribute." Contribute. I wanted to laugh or scream. I was covering nearly everything, and yet somehow I was the one being scolded. "What if I don't have enough?" I asked quietly. "Then you buy the basics," she answered bluntly. "The kids come first. You can't be selfish with money when little ones depend on you." Selfish. That word hit me harder than anything else. Selfish for struggling to fund a household of 5 adults and children when I was living on less than what Gustavo spent on snacks. And right then, he appeared, stretching like someone who had just finished a marathon. But it was only 4:30 p.m. "Honey, could you prep something good for dinner? It's been a tough work day." A tough work day. He had been asleep on the couch at 1 p.m. "I thought you worked from home today," I said, without accusation, just confusion. "I did," he replied quickly. "Virtual meetings, important calls. It's exhausting." Exhausting. From a man who barely worked more than a few hours. Then he added something that nearly made my heart stop. "By the way, Renata," and I talked, "from now on when we're relaxing in the living room, try not to make too much noise in the kitchen. Cook earlier so you don't disturb us." I stared at him. Cook earlier? But I was supposed to follow the schedule they forced me on. Cook quietly, but somehow still cook on time. Rules that contradicted each other. Rules meant to trap me. Rules to remind me who they believed I was. Their servant. And then, as if she had been waiting for her moment, Renata stepped in. "Actually, Mom, we need to talk about your room." I turned slowly. She continued, casually brushing her hair behind her ear. "We've decided it makes more sense for you to move into the small room in the back. The master bedroom is too cramped for us now. We need more space, and it just works better for everyone." For everyone. But me? My room. The one with the dresser I bought with my first paycheck. The bed where I had cried after my husband died. They wanted it. And the worst part, they said it like it was logical. But their next practical change made me realize they weren't just taking my space. They were slowly erasing me from my own home. I stared at Renata as if I hadn't heard her correctly. Move? To the tiny room in the back? That cramped storage-like space near the kitchen? The one barely big enough for a single bed? "That room is very small," I whispered. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "There isn't space for my things." Renata shrugged, as if the problem were too minor to consider. "Mom, you don't need much space. You barely spend time in your room anyway. And Gustavo and I need a bigger closet. You know how it is with kids.
We have so many things. Gustavo chimed in with a smile that made my stomach tighten. Plus, your new schedule starts early. The small room is close to the kitchen. You'll be able to start breakfast without waking anyone. Perfect setup, don't you think? Perfect. For them. My comfort wasn't even part of the conversation. I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could speak, Ethan ran into the kitchen holding his dead tablet. "Grandma, my charger's in your room. Can I go get it?" "Sure, honey," I began. "No," Renata cut in sharply. "Ethan, you wait. Grandma will bring it. You're not allowed to go into her room without permission." A bitter laugh almost escaped me. My room, which they had no problem taking from me, suddenly needed boundaries when a child wanted a charger? Their control didn't make sense unless I looked at it for what it truly was. A slow, calculated takeover. "Mom," Renata continued, as if we hadn't just talked about moving me like furniture, "this weekend works best for your room change. Gustavo can move your things. Well, the things you actually need." She smiled. "We'll use the rest." The rest? My furniture, my dresser, my vanity, my bed. Things I had bought over decades of sacrifice. I wanted to cry, or scream, or break something. But instead I stood there frozen, wondering how long I had been allowing small acts of disrespect to snowball into outright domination. And then she delivered the next blow, casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. "Oh, and Mom, Sundays are our family day from now on. Gustavo and I want quality time with the kids, so it's better if you go out for the day. You can visit friends or walk in the park. Just give us space." I blinked, stunned. Sundays, my favorite day to spend with my grandchildren? Sundays, my only day to feel joy in this house. "And where exactly am I supposed to go every Sunday?" I asked, my voice trembling. Renata gave a little sigh. "Mom, you're making it dramatic. Just find something to do. You're always saying you're lonely. Going out will be good for you." The irony punched me straight in the heart. Lonely? I was suffocating in a house full of people who didn't see me. I went to my bedroom that night unable to sleep. My mind replayed every moment of the past 2 years. Every small favor, every tiny, no problem, every quiet sacrifice. All of those pieces had added up to this: my daughter treating me like a live-in maid. My son-in-law lounging in my living room, criticizing me for not being productive. My grandchildren calling me without warmth, expecting service, not love. And Renata? When had she stopped being my daughter and started being someone who could talk to me this way? Questions swirled in my head, but one rose above all the rest. How much more was I willing to lose before I finally stood up for myself? I didn't know the answer yet, but the next conversation I had would push me one step closer to discovering it. The next morning felt heavier than the night before. I moved through my routine like a shadow, preparing breakfast while trying not to wake anyone up, though a part of me wondered why I still cared about their comfort when mine had become irrelevant. By the time the house settled into its noisy daytime rhythm, I had already cleaned the living room, folded a load of laundry, and mopped the kitchen floor. It wasn't even noon, yet I felt drained to the bone. While wiping crumbs off the counter, I heard someone at the front door. At first, I thought maybe Gustavo had forgotten something. But when I opened the door, my heart softened. "Lucy!" I blinked in surprise. My neighbor of 15 years stood there with a bag of pastries and her familiar warm smile. She tilted her head. "You look exhausted, honey. Mind if I come in?" I stepped aside without hesitation. Lucy had always been kind, but today her presence felt like a lifeline. She walked into the kitchen, eyeing my face with concern. "We haven't talked properly in weeks. You disappear early, come home with grocery bags, and you look more tired each day. Something's wrong." I tried to brush it off. "Oh, you know how things get in a busy house." But the lie tasted bitter. Lucy raised an eyebrow, the same way she used to when catching her kid sneaking cookies. "Try again. I've known you too long for that answer." And suddenly, something in me cracked. I sat at the table, and the truth poured out. I told her about the schedule, the endless chores, the money they demanded, Gustavo sleeping while I cleaned, the Sunday banishment, the room I was being forced to vacate. I told her everything. Lucy listened silently. No interruptions, no judgments, only understanding. When I finished, my eyes were wet and my hands trembled. Lucy leaned forward, placing her warm hands over mine. "Honey, this isn't just disrespect. This is abuse." The word echoed in the quiet kitchen. Abuse. A word I'd never connected to my daughter. A word I associated with strangers, not family. But deep down, Lucy was right. "This isn't how a loving family behaves," she continued. "They're not asking you to help. They're exploiting you. And if you keep allowing it, they will only push further." I swallowed. Hearing the truth spoken aloud made it unavoidable. But where would I go? Who would take me in at my age? She shook her head firmly. "You have it all backwards. Sweetheart, they need you. You have a home. You have income. You have your mind, your health. You're not trapped. You're holding the keys." Her words hit me like a jolt of electricity. The house was mine. The money was mine. The life was mine. I had simply forgotten. "Listen," she said gently, "ask yourself something. If a maid worked the hours you do, paid for the groceries, and never got a day off, how long would she stay?" My breath hitched. "Not one day." Before I could speak, we heard a car door slam outside. Renata and Gustavo arriving back from their weekend retreat. Their laughter floated through the open window, carefree and loud. They stepped inside like royalty returning to their palace. Lucy squeezed my hand before leaving. "Remember what we talked about. You deserve better. And you're stronger than you think." When they walked in, criticizing the grocery bags I hadn't bought and the towels I hadn't replaced, Lucy's voice echoed in my mind. They need you. Not the other way around. But I didn't realize yet. My breaking point was only hours away, and once it hit, nothing in the house would ever be the same again.
Monday morning arrived like a slap. I had barely slept, my mind buzzing with Lucy's words and the cold reality of my situation. Still, habit pulled me out of bed before dawn. I dressed quietly and headed toward the kitchen. Until the doorbell rang. At 5:30 a.m., my heart jumped. When I opened the door, I found an older woman standing there with two enormous suitcases and an expression that could curdle milk. Marissa, Gustavo's mother. Without even a hello, she pushed past me into the hallway. Finally, that taxi driver was awful. "I hope my son told you about my dietary needs," she said, brushing off her coat like she was arriving at a hotel. My stomach tightened. Not once had Renata or Gustavo mentioned she was arriving today. "Gustavo said you'd take care of everything," she continued, glancing around the house with judgment in her eyes. "Where's my room?" "Your room?" My mind screamed, but I said nothing. I walked her to the master bedroom, the one that had been mine for 3 decades, the one they planned to take from me next. Now it was for Marissa. She entered and immediately began inspecting everything. These curtains are ugly. They need to be replaced, and this bedding isn't suitable. I'll need you to wash it again with hypoallergenic soap. I can't sleep on just anything." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted metal. At 6 a.m. sharp, she appeared in the kitchen in a silk robe and feathered slippers, clearing her throat dramatically. "For breakfast, I need 2 eggs, well-cooked, no oil, whole wheat toast, lightly toasted, fresh fruit, only sweet and ripe, and my coffee must be barely tinted, not too strong." I stared at her, stunned. "Marissa, I don't have those things in the house." "What do you mean you don't have them?" she barked. "What kind of home doesn't have basic ingredients for a proper breakfast?" Before I could respond, Gustavo walked in, hair still messy, but already wearing that irritated expression he saved only for me. "What's going on? Why all this noise?" he snapped, although it was his mother raising her voice. "She doesn't have the ingredients for my breakfast," she complained, pointing at me like I was faulty equipment. Gustavo turned to me. "Mom, didn't you go shopping this weekend? Why is the house empty again?" I held my ground. "I bought what Renata asked for, and I already used my money." "No excuses," he said firmly. "My mother needs to eat. Go to the supermarket now and buy what she wants." I stared at him. "And with what money?" I asked quietly. "With your pension, obviously," he scoffed. "That's what you're here for, to keep this place running." Something snapped in me. It wasn't loud, dramatic, or visible, but it snapped. "I don't have any more money to spend," I said, voice calm but steady. The room went silent, like I had committed a crime by daring to say no. Renata stumbled into the kitchen, hair messy, annoyance written all over her face. "What's going on?" "She refuses to buy food for Grandma Marissa," Gustavo said, as if exposing a scandal. Renata turned to me sharply. "Mom, is that true?" "It's true," I answered. "I've spent everything already. I can't afford more." Her face twisted in disbelief. "Mom, come on. Breakfast costs what, $15? You're really going to make this difficult? For family?" Family. That word burned. They only used it when they wanted something. I looked at all 3 of them. Renata with her frustration, Gustavo with his entitlement, Marissa with her disgust, and something inside me hardened. "Fine," I said slowly. "I'll go." Relief washed over their faces. They didn't know I meant something entirely different. Because instead of going to the supermarket, I walked straight into the office of a lawyer who would change the entire fate of that house. The moment I stepped out of the house, the cold morning air felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. Instead of heading toward the supermarket, I turned left and walked straight toward the small shopping plaza a few blocks away. My steps were shaky at first, but with each stride, my resolve grew stronger. Inside the plaza, tucked between a pharmacy and a tax office, was a modest law office with a faded sign. David Miller, attorney at law. I hesitated for just a second, then pushed the door open. A young receptionist looked up with a gentle smile. "Good morning. How can we help you?" "My name is Margaret Everett," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I need to understand what rights I have in my own home." She didn't blink, didn't judge, didn't pry. She simply nodded and handed me a form to fill out. "Mr. Miller has emergency openings. He'll see you shortly." Within minutes, I was sitting across from a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a notebook already open. "What's going on, Mrs. Everett?" he asked softly. And just like with Lucy, the truth spilled out of me. The schedule, the forced chores, the financial pressure, the room they wanted to take, the threats of throwing me out if I didn't obey, the unexpected arrival of Gustavo's mother, the demand that I use my pension to feed a household of 5. I spoke for nearly 20 minutes without taking a breath. David Miller didn't interrupt once. He took careful notes, nodded often, and only after I finished did he lean forward with a seriousness that sent a shiver down my spine. Mrs. Everett, he said, what you're describing is not just unfair, it's illegal. This falls under elder financial and emotional exploitation. The words settled over me like a heavy blanket. And then a strange, uplifting warmth. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't ungrateful. I was being abused. And as for their so-called tenant rights, he continued, they don't exist in the way they told you. They have not paid rent. They have forced you to cover living expenses. They've taken over your property without legal agreement. The law is on your side, not theirs. I exhaled shakily, a release I didn't know I needed. What can I do? I asked. He listed options calmly. A written notice ending their permission to stay, a new set of legal conditions for anyone remaining, immediate removal of unauthorized guests, eviction proceedings if they refused, and documentation of elder abuse if they continued exploiting me. Would you like me to prepare formal letters? He asked. Yes, I answered, without hesitation. Today. He nodded, already typing. I'll draft 3 letters, one for your daughter, one for Gustavo, and one for his mother. You can deliver them yourself if you prefer. I will, I said. The firmness in my voice surprised even me. Before he left, he added gently, one more thing. Change your bank access codes and credit card permissions. You need financial security before anything else. That advice hit hard. Renata had been using my cards so casually, I'd almost forgotten it shouldn't be normal. I walked straight to the bank next, changed every PIN, removed every authorization from Renata, put alerts on every transaction. For the first time in months, the money I earned felt like mine. When I returned home hours later, without groceries, Renata and Marissa jumped up from the couch, ready to scold me for being late. But I didn't let them speak. We need to talk, I said, standing tall. They froze. Something about my tone made them sit down. And for the first time since they had moved in, they looked at me with fear. Because the moment I placed those legal letters on the table, everything they thought they controlled began to crumble. I placed the 3 sealed envelopes on the coffee table, one by one, making sure each name was clearly visible. Renata, Gustavo, Marissa. It felt strange, liberating, heavy, terrifying, and empowering all at once. My hands weren't trembling anymore. I finally felt like the woman I once was, the woman they had slowly chipped away. Renata was the first to speak, her voice high and sharp. What is this, Mom? Why are you acting weird? I sat down across from them, keeping my posture straight. These, I said calmly, are legal notices. Gustavo snorted. Legal? What are you even talking about? You went to a lawyer instead of buying breakfast? Marissa folded her arms, glare icy. This better not be anything foolish. I am not in the mood. I nodded. Then you should read your letters. Renata hesitated before opening hers. Gustavo ripped his in half just to read it faster. Marissa took hers delicately, like it might stain her fingers. For the next 30 seconds, the only sound in the room was the rustling of paper. Then everything exploded at once. What the hell is this? Gustavo shouted, face turning red. You're giving us 30 days to leave? Renata's eyes filled with shock. Eviction? Mom, you can't be serious. We're family. Marissa's voice came out in a hiss. You have no respect for elders. After everything I've suffered in life, this is what I get? I held up a hand before the noise swallowed me. Sit down. Something about my tone must have startled them, because they did. You have taken advantage of me far too long. I began, each word firm. You have used my home, my money, my labor, and my kindness. And you've treated me like I'm a burden, instead of the woman who built this house. Renata shook her head, tears forming. We didn't mean to. No, I interrupted gently, but firmly. let me finish. I have covered all expenses for nearly 2 years. I've cooked every meal, cleaned every room, paid for everything from groceries to electricity. And when I asked for respect, I got demands. When I needed help, I got chores. When I asked for peace, I got insults. Gustavo shot up from his seat. We have tenant rights. A lawyer told us that. No lawyer told you that. I spoke to an actual attorney this morning. You have no lease, no rent payments, and no claim to this home. His mouth opened, but no words came out. As for your mother, I continued, turning to Marissa, she is not authorized to stay here. She is not part of this household. She has 48 hours to leave. Marissa gasped as if I'd slapped her. You can't do this. I just did. Renata's tears spilled. Mom, why didn't you talk to me first? A sad smile crossed my face. I did, many times, but you were too busy being in control to listen. She wiped her eyes furiously. So you want us gone? Just like that? I want my home back, I answered softly. I want peace, and I want a life where I'm not treated like a servant. Silence filled the room. Heavy, unavoidable. Gustavo paced like a trapped animal. This is nonsense. You can't survive alone. You need us. No, I said, a calm certainty settling over me like armor. You need me. You always have. And from the way their faces shifted, shock, fear, realization, I knew they finally understood. But I wasn't done yet, because the next step I took would not only protect me, it would ensure they could never trap me again. After the eruption in the living room, the house fell into a tense, unnatural silence. No shouting, no excuses, no fake apologies, just a thick, heavy quiet that settled over the walls like dust. I went to my room, not to cry, not to hide, but to gather the documents Mr. Miller had given me. I spread them across my bed, proof of ownership, financial statements, the lawyer's notes, and the remaining formal copies of the notices. For the first time in months, my room felt like mine again. But I wasn't naive. I knew Renata and Gustavo weren't going to accept this peacefully. They were too used to controlling the narrative, too addicted to having power over me, too comfortable living a life where I paid for everything while they judged everything. A knock sounded on my door. It wasn't gentle. It was the knock of someone who felt entitled to answers. Mom, can we talk, please? Renata said. Her voice strained, but there was no softness in them, no remorse, just panic. She slipped inside and closed the door behind her. What are you doing? She whispered harshly. Why would you do this to us? I stayed calm. Because you left me no choice. That's not fair, she snapped. We were struggling. We thought you'd understand. Family is supposed to help family. I have helped, I said quietly. More than you know. She shook her head. It's not like that. Gustavo and I had plans. We were trying to save, and you're just throwing us out. I'm giving you 30 days, I corrected. And during those 30 days, the rules change. Her eyes narrowed. What rules? I handed her the printed sheet, my new house rules. Rules that protect me. She scanned them quickly. Everyone must contribute financially. No one may use my bank account or cards. Household chores will be divided fairly. No guests may stay without my approval. No entering my bedroom or personal spaces. No verbal abuse or threats. Respect is not optional. Renata looked up at me startled. These are impossible. No, I replied. They are basic. They are human. They are reasonable. She scoffed. Gustavo will never accept this. That's his choice. But the eviction notice is legal. If either of you violate my rules,
The 30 days becomes immediate removal. Her lip trembled, not from sadness, but from fear. Mom, you're choosing a lawyer over your own daughter. I'm choosing myself, I said gently, for the first time in a long time. Her eyes hardened again. So what? Now you're just going to act like we've been awful? Like we never tried? I didn't respond. Sometimes silence says more than words. Then she said something that revealed everything. Without us, you'll be alone. You think people like Lucy can take care of you? What will you do when you get old, when you get sick? You're burning your bridges, Mom. I felt no fear, no guilt, no panic. I looked her straight in the eyes. I'd rather live alone than live under your cruelty. The truth hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Renata didn't speak again. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Through the thin walls, I heard Gustavo's furious whisper and Marissa's outraged shrieks, papers rustling, footsteps pacing, plans being made, blame being tossed around like a ball. But none of it scared me anymore. The part of me that had once feared them was gone. And the next morning, when they tried their final trick to intimidate me, my answer proved they had finally underestimated the wrong woman.
I woke up the next morning earlier than usual, not from duty, but from clarity. For once, there was no dread clawing at my chest, no fear of what they might demand, no anxiety about how they would speak to me. Just a quiet, steady strength. But I knew they wouldn't let this end quietly. Sure enough, when I stepped into the hallway, I found all three of them waiting for me. Renata, Gustavo, and Marissa standing like a little jury, ready to issue their verdict. Gustavo was the first to speak. "We talked," he said coldly, "and we've decided something." I almost smiled. The idea that they still believed they were the ones making decisions in my house was almost amusing. He continued, "Your rules don't make sense. We're not living under your dictatorship. If you want us to stay, the schedule remains, and you'll continue covering food until we get back on our feet." Renata stepped forward, voice trembling with forced confidence. "Mom, you need us. You're not well enough to live alone. And honestly, we've been letting you stay here out of kindness, so stop acting like the victim." Marissa nodded firmly. "And I'm not leaving in 48 hours. I came here to be cared for, and that's what's going to happen." I looked at each of them slowly. Their arrogance was stunning, almost unbelievable. They still believed fear controlled me. But fear was no longer welcome in this house. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "You have 3 choices." They stiffened, caught off guard. "Choice 1, I said, holding up a finger. "Follow my rules for the next 30 days, contribute financially, treat me with respect, and begin looking for a new home." Silence. "Choice 2, I continued, "leave today. The police will enforce the eviction if necessary." Gustavo scoffed. "Please, you won't dare." "And choice 3, I finished, refuse both options, and you force me to file a full elder abuse report, with witnesses, with documentation, and with legal consequences neither of you can afford." Their faces drained of color. Renata's voice cracked. "Mom, you want to destroy your own family." I held her gaze. "You destroyed this family the day you handed me that schedule." Marissa stepped back, shaken. Gustavo's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult them. I didn't cry. I simply delivered the truth. Clear, firm, final. "You have until noon to decide." And then I walked away.
For 3 hours, the house was filled with whispering, arguing, doors opening and closing, hushed phone calls, and the low murmur of panic. They were scrambling for control that no longer existed. At 11:57 a.m., there was a knock on my door. Renata stood there, tears streaking her face, not the manipulative kind, but the wounded, defeated kind. "We'll leave," she whispered. We'll find somewhere else." I nodded. "I hope someday you understand why this happened." She didn't answer. She just walked away, shoulders slumped. By early evening, the house grew quieter and quieter. Boxes being closed, suitcases wheeled out, Marissa muttering under her breath, Gustavo refusing to make eye contact, and then the door shut behind him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I walked through my home and felt like I was walking through my life again. My space, my choices, my freedom. I brewed myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the sun dip below the horizon. The house no longer felt heavy. It felt open, full of possibility. Lucy stopped by later to check on me. She saw the calm on my face and smiled knowingly. "You did it," she whispered. I did. I finally did. I didn't know what the future held. Loneliness, new beginnings, challenges, joy, maybe all of it. But one thing was certain. I would never let anyone take my dignity again.